open somewhere.
So for a long time, we've been studying the Gospel of John. So our study is actually drawing to an end. We're studying the Passion of Christ, which began with Jesus being arrested in the garden in John chapter 18. And remember, when Jesus was arrested, he was in charge of the situation. He allowed himself to be arrested. And he controlled the situation so finally that his disciples were able to escape and were not arrested also. Next, we talked about Peter's denial of Jesus. And then last week we saw that although Peter struggled and ended up denying Jesus, John, the Apostle John, stuck with Jesus and followed him through it all. And then Jesus had warned Peter that Satan was seeking to sift him like wheat. Now, Luke 22:31 and 32 says, Simon, Jesus was talking to Peter, he said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you that he might sift you like wheat. But I've prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. Jesus knew what was going to happen, and he protected Peter from something a lot worse that could have happened. These verses encourage me because I know I failed Jesus, but he never gave up on me. He's never given up on any of us, and he's not about to now. Not about to now. And so this whole situation with Jesus being arrested, it was organized by Satan. Satan was trying to defeat Jesus, and he thought if he could kill him, he'd be rid of him. Oh, he was so foolish.
Wrong.
Jesus allowed it to happen so he could pay the blood price for our sins, give us eternal life. But when Jesus rose from the grave, he defeated Satan once and for all.
It was finished.
It was finished, yes. Hi, Barbara.
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
No problem.
Glad you're here.
Bill Kathy's fault.
As Jesus was tortured and battered, he remained in control of the situation. Before Annas and Caiaphas, Jesus turned their questions back on them and pointed out their sin. At each point in this whole situation, Jesus gave his examiners a choice. They had to make this choice: obey the truth or follow their own selfish desires. If they followed the truth, they obeyed the truth, they could be saved. But if they followed their own selfish desires, there was no backing down. As we look and began to look at Jesus before Pilate, became clear that Jesus confronted Pilate with the same choice. Jesus declared himself to be the truth. He said that anyone who wished to follow the truth must follow him. And what was Pilate's response? What is truth? See, Pilate could follow Jesus and release him, or he could do the politically astute thing and send Jesus to his death. And that's where we're going to pick it up today. It's in 18, yeah. Gary, could you read John 18, 38 to 40?
Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, "I find no guilt in him, but you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" They cried out again, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber.
Okay. Pilate had already given, Jesus had already given Pilate the choice between truth and spiritual death. And Pilate chose the latter. He chose politics over the truth. And I'm telling you what, politicians have not stopped doing that for eons. So Pilate thought he had a chance to get out of the predicament by offering Jesus as the one that he could release for the Passover. Because he knew Jesus was innocent, so he was trying to find a way to release him. But Satan had already stirred up the crowd and they called for Barabbas. And I think this surprised Pilate. I think it's pretty clear that it surprised Pilate. So let's read the first 11 verses of John 19. Nancy, could you read that? John 19, 1 through 11. And you're on mute, by the way. There you go.
Okay. Then Pilate took Jesus and flogged him, and the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and struck him with their hands. Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him out to you that you may know that I find no guilt in him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no guilt in him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to that law, he ought to die because he has made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. He entered his headquarters again and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. So Pilate said to him, "You will not speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you and authority to crucify you?" Jesus answered him, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore, he who delivered me over to you has the greater sin."
Ooh. Wow. Pilate admitted that he didn't think Jesus was guilty. And yet, he ordered Jesus flogged. Why would he do something like that?
Well, I think, that he probably thought that if the people saw that he had already punished him, maybe they'd let him go.
Trying to assuage the crowd.
Yes. And he was also afraid of Jesus. And fear leads people to do wicked things. Pilate wanted to show Jesus that he was in charge. That's part of it. Part of it, he was trying to show Jesus that he was in charge, and having Jesus flogged was pure, unadulterated wickedness.
Powerful.
If someone is not guilty, it's wrong to punish them. He should have been released. But no. He had him flogged because he's trying to satisfy the Jews. He's trying to keep his political position. This is all politics all the time. And then this, of course, the soldiers took it even further. They tried to purposely humiliated Jesus and beat him up after they flogged him. Just being hateful. Man, that scene from The Lion and the Witch in the Wardrobe. Have you ever seen that movie, the Disney movie, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, or read the book? When the witch who represents Jesus takes, Aslan willingly.
The witch represents Satan, right?
The witch represents Satan, and
You said Jesus.
I'm sorry.
And
And Aslan, the lion, represents Jesus, and Aslan willingly went to give himself up to the witch because of the young boy's sin. And all her minions just beat him up and just tore him all to pieces, and then she stabbed him. Of course, he comes back to life in the morning. And it's a beautiful story, but You know what? Jesus did it for you and me. He allowed it to happen for you and I. Jesus, all he had to do was speak a word and the soldiers would have been dead. He could have called 10,000 legions of angels. He didn't. The, he simply allowed it to happen. Isaiah 53:7 says, he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to slaughter, like a sheep that is before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. That day, this prophecy was completely and totally fulfilled.
Yeah. Mhm.
So Pilate brought Jesus out to the Jews. He was beaten and bloody. Pilate then told them that Jesus was not guilty of anything, but the beating was not enough for the Jews. They wanted Jesus dead. Nothing else would do because they were being incited. They were being incited by Satan.
They were.
So Pilate told them to take Jesus and crucify him themselves. The Jews could not do this. So they added another charge. They told Pilate that Jesus had claimed to be the Son of God. What was Pilate's response?
You're afraid.
He was afraid. When Pilate heard this statement, he was even more, he was already afraid,
It's like, where do you?
even more afraid. Here was a man who was clearly innocent. They had flogged him, but nothing changed. Most men would have said anything to get out of that situation, but not Jesus. In fact, Jesus wouldn't even answer Pilate. I was thinking about it. Actually, I wonder that Jesus could even speak after the beating he took. So Pilate once again threw his Roman authority at Jesus. And Jesus' response was blunt and clear. Pilate's authority came from God, not from man. And then Jesus said something that got Pilate's attention. He said that those who had delivered him up were sinning more than Pilate was in this situation. Pilate knew that what he had done to Jesus was wicked. He knew that was wrong. He had no doubts.
Because he did it on purpose.
Yeah. Jesus had given Pilate a chance not to sin, but Pilate had chosen his political career over obedience to truth. Okay, Bob, are you able to read?
Oh, I can.
Okay. How about reading John 19:12-16?
Okay. From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes a king opposes Caesar." So when Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Stone Pavement, and in Aramaic, Gabbatha, I think. Now it was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about the 6th hour, and he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." And they cried out, "Away with him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priest answered, "We have no king but Caesar." So he delivered him over to be crucified.
Pilate renewed his efforts to release Jesus. But now, because Pilate was feeling very guilty and he knew Jesus was innocent. But this time, the Jews knew that Pilate was a political animal. And this time they tried another political angle. And they said that if the Jesus claimed to be king, he was in opposition to Caesar. Therefore, if Pilate released Jesus, he would be also in opposition to Caesar. This struck at the very core of Pilate's political aspirations. So in saying this, the Jews forced Pilate's hand from a political situation. Pilate's political position was more important than the truth or guilt or innocence. So the time here was the 6th hour, which is noon. So they measured time. The first hour was 6 in the morning. The 6th hour was noon, and then the what is it? The 12th hour was 6 in the evening,
Mhm.
and that's how they measured time for the day. And the next day started at 7, right after 6 o'clock in the evening. So they went from instead of going from midnight to midnight like we do, they went from 6 to 6. Jesus' trial and beatings had been going on for 6 hours. Would have been a very long time to endure physical pain that Jesus endured. And John said that it was a day of preparation for the Passover, meaning, according to the commentaries, that probably means that it was the day of preparation for the Sabbath that was the beginning of Passover week. And Pilate gave the Jews one more chance, and they demanded Jesus be crucified. And when Pilate mentioned that Jesus was their king, the Jews said, "Our only king is Caesar." What a stupid thing to say. They're the ones that wanted the Romans out.
Well, and that also denies everything that the Old Testament, that God was to be their king.
Yeah,
Right.
that was so wrong on so many levels. They hated the Romans,
Well,
but it shows how much they hated Jesus, and they were acting under the influence of Satan. This was Satan's show, start to finish.
Hmm.
But
Which book of the Bible has where Pilate's wife talked to him?
Luke, that's in Luke, I think. I think it's in Luke. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering, was the emperor, Roman emperor, was he seen as viewed as a god by the Romans, or was he just a leader? Because I
Depends.
think,
Depends. Many times in the later, after Jesus, many of them viewed themselves as God. I don't know if the reigning Caesar at the time, which was Augustus.
yeah, because I was thinking the idolatry aspect of it. I just didn't know. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know either.
well, he certainly was worshipped.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
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 The first prophecy of Jesus came in Genesis 3:15, and it was being fulfilled at that moment. Satan was bruising Jesus' heel. When Jesus rose from the grave, he bruised Satan's head. It was the beginning of the end for Satan. So Satan had this whole thing orchestrated to kill Jesus, and God was going, "You think you got it." But it had to be horrible for God to go through this as well. So Pilate delivered Jesus to the soldiers and the Jewish leaders to be crucified. Kathy, could you read verses 16b to 22?
Okay. 16B. Sorry. Okay. 16B. Sorry, my phone is acting. Here we go. 16A. What's 16B? Oh,
So,
all right. So they took Jesus, and he went out bearing his own cross to the place called the place of a skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with 2 others, one on either side, and Jesus between them. Pilate also wrote an inscription and put it on the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this inscription, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Aramaic, in Latin, and in Greek. So the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews, but rather, this man said, I am King of the Jews." Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written."
This whole passage is what we've been studying was really hard for me to study because looking at what happened to Jesus, it it forced me to think about what Jesus allowed himself to endure for me, for you, for all of us. It was awful, but he did it. He did it because he loves us. They took Jesus out of the city of Jerusalem to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of a skull. It was outside the city of Jerusalem because it just was. And there's prophecies that said that no one could be crucified inside the city. The Jews wouldn't allow anyone to be crucified inside the city. It was a horrible way to die. John left out a lot of the details that were included by the other gospel writers. The other writers record that Jesus was flogged a second time before he was crucified. The first flogging was a lesser flogging. It was flogging for a minor criminal. The first flogging didn't use glass and rock fragments in the whip the first time. The second time they did, which laid open his back. John also does not record the fact that Jesus was unable to carry his cross the whole distance out of the city. He was too weak from loss of blood. Crucifixion was one of the worst torture sessions ever invented. The pain of crucifixion was unimaginable. The Jews wanted Jesus to be crucified because they wanted to watch him suffer. He had embarrassed them so badly, so many times. They were so angry. It was pure wickedness. And Jesus suffered horribly for a few hours. The Jews that did this to Jesus are even now suffering in hell. And they're going to suffer for eternity. Jesus was crucified between two men who were criminals. Now, John didn't record anything about the criminals, but we know from Luke 23, verses 39 to 43, that one of the criminals found salvation through Jesus while hanging on the cross next to Jesus. That's one of the most powerful stories in the Bible, in my mind. It tells me that it's never too late to put your faith in Jesus until you die. And you don't have to be baptized. You don't have to speak in tongues. You don't have to
Church member.
be a church member. You don't have to do anything but put your faith in Jesus. This man did nothing but trust in Jesus, and Jesus says, "Today you'll be with me in paradise."
It also dispels the idea of good works.
Yes,
Leads to
absolutely.
salvation. Yeah.
There's
He didn't do anything.
There's nothing he could do.
Nothing he could do. He's hanging on the cross. Yeah.
Nothing he could do but trust him.
Yeah.
Believe in him. He believed in him. He believed that he was the Messiah. He said, please remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise. One of the best stories.
First one in.
Yeah. Pilate put the sign on Jesus' cross saying he was the king of the Jews, and this made the Jews angry. But Pilate would not relent. Of course, this didn't save Pilate from condemnation. Again, it was all politics for him. And he wanted to show the Jews that he was in charge, and that's why he wouldn't change. That's why he wouldn't change it. He was kind of thumbing his nose at them. But what condemned Pilate was his rejection of Jesus as the truth. Jesus could have saved Pilate just as he saved the criminal on the cross. If Pilate would have believed what Jesus told him, you have to believe that I'm the truth and you have to follow me. And Pilate could have done that, but he chose not to. He chose politics and his own position over that.
Well, it didn't turn out well for him.
No, it didn't. He was out real soon after that. So next week we'll continue studying the crucifixion, starting in John chapter 19, verse 23. And there's really a lot more to talk about.